All right, this is the ABC Huddle for January 11th, 2022. And today we're going to be just listening to a little bit of audio and hearing how to make sense of some audio and just some nuances as we're listening in. I was about to share, remembered that I needed to turn this on recording, that I was talking with one of our clients here recently and just within this last week. And the volume of speaking certain people do, and I know you all have one or two on your boards, and the fact that we as transcriptionists are supposed to take these big conversations or these big conceptual things that somebody is trying to express, not always eloquently, obviously, and then to pull that together, not only so that it makes sense to the reader grammatically, but that it's so that we're also accurately capturing, the nuggets of that conversation. We don't need all of the expletives, the narrative that goes in behind them finally making their point, or as some of our speakers, their points are kind of all throughout their conversation, and we're trying to bring that to make it succinct and still sound like them. And this particular city recorder says, what we do is an art. And I just want to commend all of you for it. It's hard work, it's brain work. It seems so silly, we're not normal transcriptionists by any matter of means. So I just wanted to let you guys, I also acknowledge you as artists of the written word and the spoken word, because it really is the perfect coming together of those two. And it really is a skill. I am continually improving my skills. I know all of you are there too. But just wanted to acknowledge you as artists, and understand that it's not for the faint of heart, for sure. So I was just going to pull up, I've got just one little ditty here as an example in a LOCC file. LOCC has been pushing like 4, 5, 6 hour meetings for what, the last couple of months, Claire?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and it's been emotional, it's been hot topics, and therefore it can get challenging to go. And they've been doing pickleball. I'm sure you've heard that on the other recordings. We're getting geared up because they're putting in a new water treatment plant that's very controversial because of the neighborhood it's in and the slopes and the geography and the topography and all the other stuff that's happening in there. It's a very busy city. So in this one, I'm just going to share screen, and I may have a couple more afterwards, but I'm going to, oh, hello. I'll share screen, and then I'll just show you this one particular segment. I'll give you a little background as it's popping up. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Do I need to magnify the wording, or are you guys good?
I'm fine.
Okay, so we're looking at this Robert Roos compared to Robert Roos on this side. You can see that obviously that's the markup side. So just as let's see, I think I'll just play the audio first, and hopefully I got it pretty close. Oh, 51. A lot of times, as you all know, it's challenging to get it right there. So forgive the gobbledygook coming through, and we'll try and nail this as closely as we can to the actual audio. Here's the pause. All right. And I'll just play a little bit. Tell me if you can hear it okay. Turn my volume.
Yes, here come recording it, get in front of that microphone right there, and I don't project very well. So Robert Roos, 5327 Carbon Grove Lane. Yeah, just on the Beluga Path topic.
Can you guys hear that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can you slow it down a little?
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me. Okay. Okay, so then I'll also move this guy out of the way. And you guys, I don't have anything blocking your screen or anything.
No.
Okay. All right, here we go. We're just starting with Robert Roos, and I'll just let it play through the whole thing. Is that okay? We've got time? Okay.
Topic. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I just ran Hood to Coast for the first time. We exchanged some emails about this. And certainly some of those legs, I felt like I was taking my life in my hands for sure. Particularly coming down from Timberline Lodge right at the beginning there. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that between the grade and the fact that it's become such an active thoroughfare, that Waluga Drive, there's, and I don't have the exact numbers, but oh, sure, the number of people coming through Waluga Drive, right? Because they don't want to go up to the circle and come across Cruz. They want to get down to Boonesbury, and the grade and the fact that people like me who are up in, you know, whether it's in any of those developments off of Carmen, we really don't have any other way to get over to the park system. So we have to go down that hill. I also have 2 small kids. We're pushing strollers, and we've had like serious issues with people not seeing us, losing control. So I understand that there's going to be an effort to reprioritize this as part of another initiative. I just want to say very clearly that this is a serious safety issue. And it's going to be it could be a disaster. So I understand there's a lot of projects that need attention. We're going to do some allocations, and this is a serious safety issue. So please take this seriously. And again, thanks so much to Lindsay for really putting in time and effort, incredibly thoughtful, really representing a large number of people over in that community. That's it. Thank you, Ms. Roos.
Okay. So to start, now I'm hindsighting on our earlier conversation, Claire, because I don't believe LACO does any addresses for their people. But if they did, it would just be removing the of and then putting the comma and then a comma after lane and then said and continued.
Okay.
So in the original, he's talking about exchanging emails with staff on the Waluga Drive pathway topic. However, as I was listening to that, I just got done running Hood to Coast. We've exchanged some emails about that. I'm envisioning he's talking to one of his buddies, pals, coffee person, somebody else that's a runner that maybe is on council, or maybe he was looking over at the staff member about the Hood to Coast, because his comment was, I'm training for Hood to Coast, or I was running Hood to Coast. And so so when I'm hearing segments, that's where I, kind of connect the dots, if you will. Wasn't certain of that. Maybe he was talking about the Waluga Drive. So I went ahead and I went ahead and retained pretty much what was in the original. He'd exchanged emails. I said with city staff's name, about Waluga Drive and how he felt his life was in danger on some stretches when he was running Hood to Coast. So that's important because for a lot of reasons. So Hood to Coast, you guys are east of the Mississippi, but it's like a marathon. They start at the top of Mount Hood and they run clear to the beach in relay segments. So it takes about 3 days. All these teams doing all this. I don't know. I've never heard them running Hood to Coast on that road. I think he was probably training for Hood to Coast.
Okay.
That's beyond what anyone I would expect to know, but it's just important to keep the words in there, because a lot of times those nouns just help ground us in what's going on. Well, he's out for a run. Okay, that's still serious. But I left it in blue, and then I concluded this at the bottom because it's like, who is he emailing? Exchanging emails. You're right to put that in there, Claire, because then it's like, whoa, there's something in there for the record. But we don't, nothing was mentioned that it was, the letter from Mr. Roos, although it could have been in a 300-page packet. There's only so much staff report I will search for things. That's when we put it blue with the timestamp exhibit number. So we're not spending all this time in the staff report. Every minute that we're in there trying to pull out minute information when staff can just look at a list when they get it and say, oh, it's exhibit number X. That's money wasted, time wasted. That's why I really encourage you to just stick with the audio. Good to question it, but then, these kind of things we can kind of put off. The other thing was, okay, so on some stretches of the roadway, he felt though his life was in danger, particularly coming down from Timberline Lodge. So I deleted all that because that was part of the Hood to Coast. That's why I don't know how he came from Hood to Coast. So maybe they came through Lake Oswego, which would have been, I don't know, doesn't matter. But I didn't put it in blue like it was wrong to put it in there, but the key thing was hood to coast.
Okay.
And then I just moved the taking his life in his own hands up so that it was kind of all together.
Okay.
When you guys read that, was there something that stuck out to you, or when you heard it and read it, was there something that stuck out to you that I removed, changed, added, rearranged that you want to talk about?
Well, I'm just wondering now. Oh, sorry, Letty, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're fine.
I was just wondering because so Letty, part of the backstory here is staff, this was the 6-hour meeting. And staff got this, I think it was this meeting, and was like, they can't be going through 53 pages of minutes. And came back with direction that we really want this all much more summarized, including this public testimony, and please just hit the highlights. So would this be better? Like for now, if I was hearing this, I would have summarized his as Robert Roos testified about serious concerns regarding safety issues on Waluga Drive owing to the street's use as a thoroughfare to Boone's Ferry and the slope or the grade of the roadway.
Yeah, something like that.
And just summarize it to that instead of mentioning any of this.
None of the hood to coast. But then I would also maybe mention he supported any effort to reprioritize a pathway along Waluga.
Okay.
It was a lack of sidewalks for a safety issue. Boom. And then
Take out that.
Yeah, he was serious safety issue. It's a serious safety issue. And so that's what I would, yeah, I think you nailed it. And then just that pathway part is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, because that's what I've been doing with this newest
good.
meeting is like.
Excellent. Okay. Did you have something, Letty?
No, I was initially wondering why you had removed the sentence about Timberline Lodge, but you've already explained that. So yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
it's part of once the hood to coast kind of took that
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Makes
okay.
sense.
And so hood to coast, so that's a marathon. So that I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to go back and think what I was thinking, taking it out. And maybe I just thought it was what he was running was Timberline Drive, because I didn't get the context about hood to coast. Okay.
Yeah, well, and he stated hood to coast. So that's where I kind of, that's where we go back to using their phrases and their wording,
Yeah.
it's when it's kind of, you're not sure what they're talking about, for instance, that noun hood to coast can kind of be a beacon. It's like a milestone in the sentence of the paragraph, gives you a lot of insight about what he's doing and so forth. And then you still have, then you can build around it, I guess. But ultimately, it wouldn't have been in there, but I would still be using that phrase as I'm working to summarize it. And I know this was a little bit prior to that, but we talked about that. I was trying to say this. Okay, so these are both cross-outs. I just left them in. My eyes always go to the orange because that's what I think is a training note. But in this instance, and I don't know, I think this one might have been my chicken scratches later. But again, the first one is just very broad. This presentation would provide council with background of the issue and a broad overview of what staff proposed. But what I've done up here is I've just inserted middle housing code amendments and the mitigation requirements for ministerial development. A mouthful, even, yeah. But just using those nouns instead of just broad stroking it, because that just keeps the reader on track with what's going to be presented or what the issues are. if that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. This one was crazy with the ministerial lot adjustment. And now that we're into Q&A, as you guys know, and for everybody watching the recording, you know, we're more summarizing in those staff reports and public comments. Sometimes it's difficult to really summarize sometimes when it's in the sentence, when, you know, the Q&A part, I mean, because you need a lot of that just to get everything correct. So this was, Councilor Mann was talking, and they had a really interesting request of changing basically a property line. Usually it's done administratively in most cities. In Laco, it's called ministerially, which is, anyway. So that's why this is such a hot mess. It was kind of all over the place.
I don't like the Q&A anyways, a lot of times. You have to put questions into the form of a sentence sometimes, and sometimes there's a lot of back and forth, and yeah, they're not my favorite.
Yeah, I find that they're, I find them actually, I think, easier sometimes than the staff reports, because even I sit there and go, does that need to be in? Does this need to be in? At least I know when I'm in Q&A, I just like sift all of the nouns and, you know, phrasings regarding development or the point of the hearing. And I kind of bring that to the surface to kind of create, if you will, my sentence structure. I think so I have this in yellow, so I'm wondering if this was one of those I was going to have you listen to. Do you guys want to listen to one more? What's your time frame like?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I forgot that this happened during this meeting.
You've had a lot happening during these meetings, so okay.
Completely forgot about this one.
This is the original. And so, do you guys have any questions for me today?
I'm still going through the latest
Okay.
Laco. I'm feeling like a lightweight now that I hear all the meetings that Letty's doing. Like, well,
They're not 6-hour meetings though.
It all evens out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Okay, let me grab this audio and let's see, 104. Mhm. So, twiddle your thumbs. So we'll just take, for those listening to the recording, it's just going to start at the one on the left is the original draft with proofing, and then the final edits are shown on the right. We're going to start up here at 104 with Mann's, so you can kind of compare, and I'll get this out of your way. We'll just go probably till, oh, come on. Probably just right here where it's about 108. So just a couple minutes. I guess maybe we'll see where it ends. We won't go a whole 4 minutes, but as soon as I hit play, I'll get it out of your way. We got a whole minute. These long meetings, it's hard to jump where you want to go.
sorry, Paula, hold on.
Okay.
You okay?
You good, Claire?
Yeah, I always tell them, please don't come in unless there's fire or blood, but they.
That's okay. We've all been there. It's not a problem. It's not a problem, truly. Okay. I think I found it close enough. So here we go. I'll hit play.
That's something that's been troubling me because I don't understand it. Can you believe it? The question is, say, for example, you have a ministerial lot line adjustment or a ministerial adjustment, a simple form that you can have, and you're going to build a triplex on that, and each of those triplexes is going to be owned by a different owner. Does that in any way, shape, or form change anything that we're talking about here? As far as I don't know, probably not SDCs as much because that goes into the building. But the way that we would handle this middle housing situation, is this question making any sense to you whatsoever? If it
But I think we need
isn't,
to distinguish,
So first of all, it took her a long time to get that sentence out. And the team did a really good job of cobbling that together. Really, the only change was, and this is something that we're seeing creep in some of our other files, is when you're starting a question, when you're starting a statement with, counselor asked if blankety blank blank blank, it ends with a period. It does not end with a question mark. So really be careful how you're using the question marks. It needs to start with the who, what, where, when, how, and it's an actual proper question to end with a question mark. So I just wanted to note that. Okay, so I'll just okay, so here's Olson with his response, and I'll just preface this so you kind of know what to hear. Looking at there's a difference between a lot line adjustment and the construction of a quadruplex or triplex. So as you're listening to it, listen for the phrases that he uses and how they are arranged in the final draft. Okay.
any sense to you whatsoever?
but I think we need to distinguish, I guess, between, and you mentioned a lot line adjustment and the construction of a quadplex or a triplex. So the lot line adjustment would be sort of neither here nor there. We wouldn't allow a lot line adjustment to be ministerial unless it didn't have an impact on the density that's allowed. That's the only types of ministerial lot line adjustments we would allow. Usually those go through a minor development process.
Right, so that would in fact be a minor adjustment if in fact you were putting, say, a triplex on a
No.
property. I'm still not getting it, am I?
No, so I guess I'm just trying to put the sort of lot line adjustment question aside, and let's just
Okay.
talk about a new lot. If they were going to construct a triplex or quadplex and wanted to sell those units off individually, they wouldn't be able to do that unless they went through a ministerial, or I'm sorry, a middle housing, expedited middle housing lot division. So essentially there's a process. It's not the typical subdivision process. It doesn't increase density, but what it does is almost just kind of divides up the different sort of parcels within quadplex. They have to be able to be split up, in plan view, similar to a townhouse. It couldn't be easily be split up, one unit above the other, but through that process, there would be an opportunity to, because that would be a minor development process. It would be expedited, but it's still a minor development process. So that, would, under those cases, the new triplex or quadplex development, or let's call it a townhouse, because that's essentially what it is. That's usually what people refer to when they think of 1 unit per lot. That would involve an assurance of the amount of density on that site and on the sites that are being created, I guess, there, and would we would have the opportunity as a city, as we do currently, for a minor development to impose conditions of approval. We're proposing for a minor development process to be able to do that, as well as for a ministerial. So we already have it for a minor development process today. We're proposing to apply it to ministerial, but what you're describing is actually minor development. So
Got it. So that would trigger everything that would normally happen in a minor development, if that be the case, as it stands at this moment.
there are restrictions within.
That still gives me a headache listening to it.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, and
yeah.
and I think I didn't have all my chicken scratches in there. And even I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, did I type that right? Because there was a lot in there. I took this whole just clarify, because he's like, we just got to move the lot line adjustment out of it. Let's handle that first. It's not happening. And then he explained more about it. But just to kind of clarify, they're just handled differently. That was the bottom line. And I thought he had stated handled differently. So I'm not sure. Maybe that's just what I came to. It's accurate, but sometimes they were just getting into the weeds so much. You didn't know yeah, I agree. It's kind of confusing how he was explaining it to her. No wonder she was confused. Anyway, that is how it landed. So this is like, how do I say, what? Course level 800 transcription college. I don't know. It's up there. This is not our normal stuff. So I just, and I think, I thought it was, there's not a lot of blue. I think Chris was proofing this and he added more just to kind of beef up the comments. And so when you come into a place where they're talking code and there's processes and this processes, and you've got a presenter that's just talking in a circle and he comes back the second time to correct all the dots, it's honestly easier for us as proofers or me as the final to have it a little more verbatim, and then just take this whole baby and put it in like blue, or put like the front and the bottom in blue with a note like, I have no idea, like this needs help, because I'm really working now and I'm seeing growth in the team to where I'm really focusing on working on doing a read through. Everyone's getting, not everyone, we still got a couple people we're still training up, but there's a vast group of the team that has hit that level where I can just pretty much do a read through and I can catch, like by reading it, that something is not right or something was, misconstrued, the nuances were not right, and then I can cut to the audio. That's generally where I'll start down the rabbit hole, because once I find that if there's one or two pieces that are off, then I start proofing through the whole file, and then that opens up a can of worms, especially if I'm finding more than one thing. Then that's a whole different training module, if you will. But it's not unusual for me to start reading through a file and see that there's things about lot adjustments and quadruplexes and setbacks kind of throw people, because that's kind of a different word. And so as I'm reading through, I find that you guys are doing, your team's doing great, but this was like out there. And so if you are questioning it, or like, I don't know if it was Chris or Claire put in there, this is so confusing. Perfect, because that gives me and even the initial proofer a heads up, like, okay, we need to pull up the audio, we need to get all of it pretty, and we need to figure out what in the world are they saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that way it hopefully will relieve you from like completely pulling all your hair out. There's always a little hair pulling involved, but that way, have some confidence. It's not all on you, get it on paper, give it your best try, put a big note on there with blue, like these are the timestamps, I'm not sure. And then that allows the rest of the team to kind of massage it and work it and then get it to final. It'll save you time, which therefore makes you more money. And we're going to have to look at it anyway. So don't beat a dead horse. Does that make sense?
Good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. This one was a mind meld. Like I had to stop away a couple times.
She's the queen of asking about ministerial lot line development. So I swear she could bring that up in any conversation. She will bring up. She lost though, so she's not on the council starting January 3rd.
Did you go and see what the election turnout was?
I was like, oh. She though, I don't know, Letty, if you do this, but I have such imagine these people. I try to develop 3D people out of them. And so she and this other counselor in Boop, they were like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and, what's his face? Antonin Scalia. Just because he was always like, I'm not paying for that. And she would say, I have to tell my truth. And I thought, this is
You know what's coming next.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she's off.
Yeah.
And so is Counselor Nguyen, and which I'm sad about because he never said anything.
Yeah.
So you don't know who his replacement's gonna be.
Yeah, when he did speak, everybody listened because you didn't hear him often.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
true, that's true. Well, before I close up, do you guys have any questions? I hope that was helpful.
It definitely is, especially the part about just the confusing things, just put
Yeah.
verbatim. That's
Yeah,
because that takes, yeah, that's a lot. That's what takes most of the time to me, is when it's a subject like that where I don't know what they're,
where do you
they-
put the piece?
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
think that's what I think is interesting. You know, I'm doing this for 18 years now, and I know Letty has as much experience. When someone says you're a transcriptionist, you know, oh, it should be fine just typing verbatim, and verbatim has its own challenges. But this takes a lot more time, and our clients are starting to understand, like, yeah, we can write, I'd rather do that verbatim and let you guys figure that out. But then they recognize, you know, this document would have been probably over 100 pages. You know, we did
Yeah.
cut a lot out. And yeah, so it's just interesting when you really start putting the pieces together and people recognize how they speak. Yeah, so I won't, enough about that. So yes, please don't, you know,
okay.
now if I'm getting like 4 pages of verbatim, we're gonna have to talk. Like little segments, things are, you guys know what you're doing. You're doing a great job. But that one was tough. That one was a tough example. So I'm glad we were able to look at that.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good. Okay. Any
Yeah.
other questions?
I'm good.
Okay,
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
The only homework, I guess, housekeeping, I should say, housekeeping thing was on Trello. I know, you know, make sure that when you're getting assignment or dragging it to, you know, in process. When you're done with the in process and everything's attached, make sure you put it to draft file complete, because I don't look to start proofing something until I see it in draft file complete. I've had a couple of times the last couple of weeks that's like, oh my gosh, they've started. And then I find that the invoice and the file, everything is there. And I could have been proofing it 5 days earlier. So yeah, just make sure we're moving those through little tiny steps, but it makes a huge difference. And then the other thing was, I think maybe that was the biggie. Yeah, just dragging Trello. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to stop the audio. Thank you for joining us. Reach out with any questions if you have any. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.